Senator Birdwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if that's a question or really or just maybe I can help illuminate the situation a bit if members of the committee would appreciate it, just a refined sense of where we are. Ms. Allman, because when I first read it, as while I was being humorous about cremation, having tried that once, and it was a very unpleasant experience. I share the concern about, the respect to life. Let me share with the committee the situation that came before me in a media event about 5 years after September 11th, maybe 6 years. There were still human remains from the Pentagon still at the Air Force Institute of Pathology that could not be identified from Flight 77. I shouldn't say Flight 77, could not be identified as to whether or not who the individual was. And out of the 184 people killed, not including the terrorists, 189 including the terrorists, the Air Force Institute of Pathology could not determine who these remains belonged to. And the Air Force Institute of Pathology, and this is why I had the media interview, decided to discard those in the trash. And that shocked the sense of those of us that are professing believers. I'm not Catholic, but a professing believer as you are. That in not knowing what is the proper disposition, and the proper disposition would have been burial at sea, because if they are Americans, you've given them a respectful burial. You can't determine if they're the terrorists that crashed Flight 77 in the Pentagon. Still a human life. I mean, Osama's somewhere in the Indian Ocean right now. So there's a clear respect, I believe, of the Catholic Church's view that we don't want to be disrespectful of human life. In the first Gulf War, we did an immense amount of killing of Iraqi soldiers. We were proud of how professional we were, but there was no joy in the death. In this case, I think we're trying to balance what is a right of conscience, and that while I both asked my staff and Senator Johnson, what does this really mean? And the imagery of the liquefied elements going down the sewer is as I share with you, the initial that strikes me as what would, I think your word, disrespectful. But I think our first obligation is the right of conscience of the family, and the difference between what we did, I think you mentioned it as 2017, that said this is how we bury. And in fact, Senator Watson, if I remember, if memory serves me correctly, Senator Watson had an amendment that would allow the family to bury the aborted child according to their religious sentiments, that Senator Seliger and I supported because of the nature of our absolute respect for right of religious sentiment. So I think that's why we have a different standard for the child, but in this case, the citizen that chooses this, well, I would profoundly disagree with this choice. It is a right of conscience question related to religious sentiment. And so I very healthy respect for your view, because the first reaction is, what are we doing here? There are people that even being secular is a religious point of view. It's a rejection of a religious point of view, and that point of view is something that we also have to have to respect. And so I hope I've helped the committee understand this a little bit, because I have an immense amount of respect for what you're telling me. But I also have to respect the fact that there may be other folks out there that don't want, that would want to make this choice. So it is from that perspective that while I don't have as the similar reaction to your testimony as Senator Johnson, I have a healthy respect for it. But my first oath is to the protection of religious sentiment, and that includes those that reject our particular worldview of faith and the Almighty, that might choose this for different reasons. So I wanted you to know that your testimony is welcome, and that it wasn't trying to be humorous. I guess I was trying to be humorous about cremation, but I've seen a lot of death in my life, and going to a lot more funerals at my age right now than I was earlier. And I think we've got to be very careful to respect the wishes of the adult that can make this decision on their own, or should it be a minor child, that the parent or the guardian can make that decision as it relates to this. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I hope that I've been
Thank you, Senator Birdwell.
helpful. Thank you.
Other